There are things about the formation of this country the elite wish you never to know, and they've been able to conceal this simply by placing clues right in front of you, in broad daylight. Although the founding pirates of this country have shown an enormous affinity towards Kemet, in the same breath, they diss them by covering up the African presence. With his tours on D.C., master historian Anthony Browder reveals the African influence on this city's calculated design. Dan Brown's Angels and Demons and the Lost Symbol show many hidden historic jewels in the carvings of buildings. In comparison, Browder's research quantum leaps Brown's. See, this ain't some box office thriller, Africans. This is our story. His book and tour reveals what's been accepted as a misconstrued, harmless replica of an ancient African society that was purposely designed to resurrect the spiritual persona of Kemet to be used as the foundation of this country's identity. Now let's be clear. I always say when it comes to the formation of this country, there are no coincidences. Everything's been done with intent and purpose. The connection America has to Kemet is no secret to a select few who describe America as the New Egypt. So it is not by accident we find a modern imitation sitting at coordinates 77 degrees latitude north, 39 degrees longitude west in the United States. I can't echo enough the words of Winston Churchill, who once said, "History is going to be kind to us because I'm going to rewrite it." A profound statement and philosophy genetically embraced by the pirates and their beneficiaries the world over. This single blatantly racist act is but a part of many in the global conspiracy of anointing white folk as the originators of civilization, when in fact their title should be master plagiarists. If you watch the video article Numerical Mysteries, you were exposed to one aspect of unveiling secrets with numbers. Browder introduces another. Using these tools enables you to see the Masonic influence throughout Chocolate City, whispering its African origin. Let's go in. We must establish an often overlooked ital piece to DC's design, that it is not a state, but actually a federal district, which before being named after that pirate Christopher Columbus was called Federal City. The Residency Act of 1790 gave President George Washington the authority to choose the location of the U.S. government, and on January 24, 1791, he announced it would be located on the east and west banks of the Potomac River, taking up parts of Alexandria, Virginia, and Georgetown, Maryland. Metaphysically speaking, another name for Washington is Wasatan, and if you look at a map, you see it is placed between Virginia and Maryland, or that Wasatan, or the devil, sits between Virginia and Maryland at the Virgin Mary's vagina, who in turn continued the birth of organized chaos and corruption. Now reason this. After the end of the 9th month, a baby comes to the womb once dilated 10 centimeters. Did you know Virginia is the 10th state and Maryland the 7th? Now remember from the video article Numerical Mysteries, number 7 is the invisible center and spirit of everything. Let that marinate a bit. Washington hired Andrew Ellicott to survey the land and Pierre Charles L'Enfant to design the city. Ellicott tapped Benjamin Banneker, a multi-genius who also happened to be one of the few free Africans in the region, for his knowledge of astronomy and geometry. He compiled a chart that not only listed the rising and setting of the sun, moon, and planets, but accurately predicted eclipses of the sun. He also laid out the constellation connections to the rising of Orion's belt, pointing towards Sirius, which is a character representation of Aset, wife of Asar. By night, He surveyed the constellations, literally bringing the heavens down to earth, giving Ellicott these blueprints to build D.C. by day. In 1971, a park was dedicated to him, ironically placed in the secluded rear of L'Enfants Plaza, hidden from the more prominent sites everyone's more familiar with. You could be in this park and not even know it, thanks to the 2 street signs indicating Banneker Circle Southwest are gone, having yet to have been replaced. This monument has been treated no different than African people have been historically. Although Washington eventually fired L'Enfant a year after hiring him, he was a big player on many of the sites. He found the infamous address 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue, originally called the President's House, and changed to the White House after being burned and rebuilt following the War of 1812. What's not common knowledge is that President's Park was once a slave quarters where our ancestors were sold right in front of the White House. In 1824, it was renamed Lafayette Park after Marquis de Lafayette, a 20-year-old Frenchman who joined Washington's army. He was wounded in battle and later returned to America, celebrated as a hero, where a number of parks, streets, cities, and counties across America bear his name, Lafayette or Fayetteville.
When a Mason reaches the 32nd degree, that is when they are taught who the original man is. And they are duty bound to acknowledge an African who knows who he or she is. Not a Negro, not a colored person, not a black person, but an African. So when they know that you know, they have to respect you because they know that you are the knowledge.
The city's original landscape being made into the shape of a square was no coincidence. For Freemasons, the square symbolizes the cornerstone or foundation of something, in this case, America. When you look at a map of D.C., you won't notice there are several symbols hidden to the naked eye. But again, if you know what to look for, they can be seen clear as day. Those in possession of most of these secrets are members of organizations older than the founding of this country. Many call these groups secret societies. The most noted are the Freemasons, a society, but not a secret one. Actually, they're a society of secrets, secrets that can be revealed if you know the ledge. Washington and party showed their hidden admiration of Kemet and African culture throughout the city. A few that stand out are the crucifix, the inverted star or pentagram, the Star of David or hexagram, and the compass and the square. First, we must realize not all of these symbols are evil. Many have an African origin, and members of these societies, including the Roman Catholic Church, took our symbols and used them for their depraved deeds. The compass and square's legs are formed at Pennsylvania and Maryland Avenues, with the circle enclosing the Capitol building, which, by the way, on top, a brown statue depicting the pirated or white version of Set, Isis, stands. The inverted star, associated by many as the devil's pentagram or goat of Mendes, often seen with a light or flame over its head, is formed by connecting DuPont, Logan, and Scott circles with Mount Vernon Square and the bottom pointing directly to the White House. The light expresses spiritual knowledge, which is usually seen in the upper or northern portion of a symbol, also depicting heaven. And we can see that DuPont, Logan, and Scott circles have 6 streets coming into each of them from all angles. At the middle of the pentagram, looking north, you'll be facing the house of the temple, the spiritual heaven of all this shit. Also known as the 33rd degree Grand Lodge of the Scottish Rite of Freemasonry headquarters, the temple is located both 13 blocks north of the White House and 13 blocks south of the Scottish Rite Temple at the corner of 16th and S Streets. With 33 columns 33 feet high surrounding the building, the entrance has two sphinxes wearing blatant Kemetic symbols, doing what a sphinx does: guard and protect. On the left, the sphinx's eyes are open, repping power. The right, closed, implying wisdom, as proclaimed by the Masons, who possess the knowledge of our legacy and have the ability to manifest it. Plus, they metaphorically have the assistance of the mythical Sphinx to protect them from anyone who opposes. Between 15th and 16th Streets, off Euclid, stands Meridian Hill Park, dubbed Malcolm X Park after the riots in the late 60s. We find that even though it was built 150 years after the original designers of D.C., we can find Masonic symbols strategically placed throughout where only those in the know can recognize. The main attraction is the largest cascading waterfall in the country, whose water falls by way of 13 pools of increased width. Each spring, papyrus and lotus plants are planted, national icons of Kemet, symbolizing the upper and lower parts. A coincidence? This design was created by none other than Banneker, who plotted the exact position of the sun at high noon on the spring equinox in March 1791. His discovery also led to how time zones are measured today, but this too isn't mentioned in our history books. As Browder puts it, a meridian is a line of longitude that runs vertically from the north to south pole, spaced 15 degrees apart. The prime meridian numbers go east and west with a total of 24 meridian lines that determine the 24 time zones. The highest point of the day, of course, is when the sun is at high noon on one of those lines. Antemeridian, or AM, stands for the first 12 hours of the day, before noon. Postmeridian, or PM, are the last. Now, why do he want you to believe our ancestors were idol worshippers because they did things like relate the sun to the creator? But ask yourself, without the sun, the planet would freeze, eliminating life as we know it. So why is it wrong to acknowledge nature like one would a mystified God? Watch the God complex. The sun was given 3 names depicting the 3 daily phases it goes through. Kepre, for when it rises in the east each morning, or rebirth. Reg indicates the sun at the meridian, or highest point of the day, 12 noon. And Amen, for the end of the day, when the sun appears to die or set. So each morning the sun rises between these 4 tekenu, reaches 16th Street at noon, illuminating what Masons call the Corridor of Light, also once known as the Avenue of the Presidents or the Washington Meridian. Today, 16th Street is referred to as the Avenue of Churches because of the more than 50 churches, spiritual centers, and Masonic spots that extend the length of this 7-mile lane, an average of 7 buildings per mile for you numerology heads. At the entrance of Meridian Hill Park on 16th and Crescent Streets, a plaque memorializing the stone marking of the Washington Meridian is placed, stating the actual point at 52 feet 9 inches west of the tablet. This should raise an eyebrow, as well as the fact that this location was declared on December 20th, 1793. Is it also a coincidence 16th Street equals 7? Again, with 7 indicating the invisible center and spirit hub of everything, 16th Street serves as the pathway of spiritual enlightenment. That's why they call it the Corridor of Light. A couple blocks north from Meridian Hill Park, A 70-foot, windowless, cube-like building sits on the corner of Columbia and 16th Street. The Scottish Rite Masons Temple. On the 16th Street side, you'll see a massive doorway with two bronze doors with a mosaic picture with a double-headed eagle above. This is supposed to be the sun, symbolizing enlightenment at the meridian, meaning this building holds the most known level of knowledge about our African sciences. The double-headed eagle stands for what Masons are taught. Sort of reminds me of the Sankofa bird. Between the heads is a pyramid with the number 32 inscribed on it, referring to the number of degrees every Mason can attain, the 33rd of which only a few are tapped. On opposite sides of the door sits two urns, symbolic for guardians who protect the knowledge inside this building. Sound similar to the boule in their logo? At about waist length on the side panels of the doors is probably the most obvious confession confirming the African connection. On the left is a carving of the sun rising out of the water with 3 candles. Above is the Latin inscription, Ex Oriente Lux, with the translation below, From the east comes light. Browder states, the 2 candles represent male and female, the third, the child born from the union. The sun symbolizes masculine energy and the water the feminine. Both are needed for the creation of life. On the right, we find what many falsely believe is the Star of David. It was originally known as a Sephidet and represents the union of Asar and Aset, Kemet's first family, and Heru's victory over his father's murderer, his uncle Set, as told in the Asarian drama. It too rises out of a body of water with 3 candles, and above we read, Ex Occidente Lex. From the west comes law. Hold that jewel. I'm going to refer to it in a sec. One of the 2 monuments dedicated to George Washington is the Masonic National Memorial, also known as the Light of Reason or Shooter's Towers, standing on Shooter's Hill, overlooking Alexandria, Virginia. Interesting enough, this monument is 333 feet tall. The design of this memorial is a bit-off copy of one of the wonders of the ancient world, the Lighthouse of Alexandria, built around 290 BC on the island of Pharos, today a part of the city of Alexandria, Egypt, which now sits below the waters of the Mediterranean Sea. So you must realize there's a reason why he's gone through great lengths to conceal the true story of our legacy. We might have never found out had they not decided to make stolen replicas of our monuments. It's as though they chose to gloat about this theft, and because of this egotistical gesture, the truth, though hidden, was preserved. It just needed someone like Browder to unearth it. We are beginning to remember. Probably the most popular site in D.C., the average person today is completely unaware the Washington Monument is a bootleg version of a 6,000-year-old relic that represents the resurrection of the first ruler and president of ancient Kemet, Asar. Among the several other Tekkenus scattered around the world, the one least known is in New York City. It took 36,000 blocks of granite to build the not surprisingly white in color monument. The capstone is said to weigh exactly 3,300 pounds, and at the time of its completion, became the tallest structure in the world. Because the land was too unstable for it to be where it was initially mapped out to be, in 1804, Thomas Jefferson placed a stone marker at the original spot. Facing west, this marker is the center point of a crucifix with the Lincoln Memorial in front of you, the White House to your right, the Jefferson Memorial to your left, and the U.S. Capitol behind you. Inside, above the elevator to the observation deck over Washington's plaque, we see a Heru Bedet, the same symbol carved above the entrance of every temple in Kemet thousands of years ago. This one also has an inverted Sephardet on top of the sun disk. The disk symbolizes Heru with his parents, the Sephardet, a saw and a set in front. It must also be noted Whitey stole our symbols and altered the meanings to intensify the perception of their mythical power and intelligence, adding centuries of deceit and confusion. We find they just couldn't fight their insatiable urge to recreate Kemet throughout D.C. So much so, they laid the streets out in the shape of a Sephardet. The Washington Monument also holds mad numerical mysteries. Finished December 6, 1888, we find the date comes to equal 9 and 7, together equaling 7, again the center of everything. The monument stands 555 feet tall and 55 feet wide. See the number 7? Even deeper, 555 feet actually equals 6,660 inches. What's more, an additional 111 feet of its height is below the surface. Add this to the 555 visible feet, and we find the total length of the monument is actually 666 feet, or 7,992 inches, both equaling 9. Now the Tekken signifies the death and resurrection of Asar, and there is no record of any kind where Washington was cut into pieces and scattered across the globe. So why a Tekken was chosen leaves me with but one theory. Knowing Whitey's perverted ways, the Washington Monument actually honors this country's biggest prick. And in this case, I think the title is fitting. West of the monument, we can see one of the most recognized shrines in honor of Abraham Lincoln, another ripped-off design from Kemet. And behind the memorial sits America's most famous gravesite, Arlington Cemetery, where America's politicians, judges, and soldiers are laid to rest. By now, you should know Arlington Cemetery too was plagiarized. They bit off the ancient Valley of the Kings that resides on the west bank of the Nile. The John Adams Building is part of a trio of buildings known as the Library of Congress, holding more than 25 million books and over 100 million maps, CDs, video, audio, newspapers, manuscripts, and magazines. There are 3 doorways to enter, each door made of bronze with 2 of the doorways having 3 figurines carved on them. These images are of historical and mythological heads who introduced writing to the people of their time. In chronological order from the east, guess who's first? Jehuti, the Kemetic Neter, or god of writing. The doors on the right acknowledge those who passed it on to the west, starting with the mythical Hermes, or Mercury of Greece. All of these are really renditions of Jehuti, and instead of crediting him, each made their own version, erasing the true identity, making it a several millennium-long mystery to learn of the true African originator. Around the set of these doors are 21 stone carvings telling the historical sequence how civilization advanced, again starting with Kemet, where we see the 3 pyramids of Giza, Notice the Heru Badet at the top? If we remember back in school, we heard of Hermes before anyone else, while never ever hearing of Jehudi. Proof white folk been concealing the truth for their benefit. Ask yourselves, why can't we find pieces of the truth on municipal buildings, but not in our schools? Saving what I find to be the most interesting structure for last is the Jefferson Building, also known as the Temple of Learning. This building is dedicated to the mythical Roman goddess of wisdom, Minerva, a pirated version of the Afrikan Neter, or goddess of wisdom and protection, Niet or Nut. The owl is her symbol, also seen on the upper right corner of the dollar bill. We also find Whitey secretly pays homage to her on the Rockefeller-owned Deer Island. What makes this one of the most ital buildings every African should see are the 33 heads that surround the outside of the building. It has been well documented the human race began in Africa, with all other races starting to emerge from there some 50,000 years ago. Researched by one Herbert Small, the now out of print 1897 published Small's Handbook, these 33 heads depict the chronological racial origin of man. Going counterclockwise from the northern entrance into the building makes one believe it begins the numerical order with the Russian Slav, ending with the 33rd being Chinese. But we find, as with everything else, an enormous amount of attention was paid in the placement of these heads. Being there as 33 heads should let you know a Masonic influence is behind this. And as mentioned, only a few have attained the 33rd degree of Masonry, which reveals humanity started in Africa, and Whitey put it on one of the very public buildings for the world to see. And we already pointed out that they acknowledge on their temple that the light or knowledge comes from the east and the law is made in the west. We see there are 5 heads in the back, all having thick noses, lips, and kinky hair. Now when we look at the United States Constitution, Article 1, Section 2, Paragraph 3, Africans are written as 3/5 of man. Knowing that 5 symbolizes man, it shouldn't surprise you the only collection of 5 ethnological heads are indeed African. And although they are in the back of the building, they correctly face east, the direction of our homeland, the first heads to see the light of the sun every morning, where all the knowledge originated. Saying that, the 4 European heads in the front of the building correctly face west, facing the capital, where laws are made for being the foundation or perpetuators of today's chaos. Now don't be fooled. Just cause the interest is in the west, don't make it the first. That's the illusion global white supremacy wants you to believe. It shouldn't be a mystery why this is the least talked about feature on this building. See, they know who we are, and that they owe their entire existence to their African parents. So we find that although one can argue Whitey has in fact preserved a significant part of our history through societies like the Freemasons, Whitey would copy the symbols and purposely alter or hide the meanings is the real question. After viewing this, the answer is very clear. We cannot be that naive to think they really don't know these meanings, and realize it was a conscious decision to choose to conceal it from the masses to preserve the illusion of elitism. Thanks to heads like Browder, now you know. Bless.